Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezra Hashem Masechet Shabbat, the beginning of Seder Moed, which follows Seder Zroim. In Talmud Bavli, the only Maseches in Seder Zroim is Brachos. So after Brachos comes the Seder Moed, and the beginning of Seder Moed is Shabbos. The reason why Shabbos begins Seder Moed, first of all, in the Torah, it is the first Moed that is brought when it says Eilu Moedei Hashem. These are the Mo'adim of Hashem, referring to Shabbos as the first of the Mo'adim over there in Parshas Emor. Also, of course, Shabbos is celebrated every single week. It's a celebration of Brias Ha'olam Yesh Me'ayin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world from nothing. And thirdly, Shabbos is most Chamor and most Kadosh out of all. We see that it's most Kadosh. One way is that we find that when it comes to the aliyahs of the Torah, it tells us in Masechet Megillah that during the week, when we read the Torah, 3 people are called as an aliyah. On Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, 4 are called to the Torah. On Yom Tov, 5 are called to the Torah. On Yom HaKippurim, 6 are called to the Torah. And yet on Shabbos, 7 are called to the Torah because Shabbos Kodesh Kadoshim. Another way we find the severity and the kedusha of Shabbos is in regards to the punishment that Chilo Shabbos carries with it. The person who is Mechalo Shabbos Chalila, if he does so b'mezid and is warned, he is Chayiv Skila, which is the most severe of all of the Dalam Misos Bezdin. So Shabbos begins Seder Moed. The pasuk says, Sheishes Yomim Ta'avoid Va'asisa Kol Melachtecha. Uviyom HaShabbos Lo Sa'aseh Melacha. And therefore, Melacha is defined as creative work. Where do we learn Melachos from? So the beginning of Parshas Vayakel takes the Iser of Shmir Shabbos, of not doing Melacha, and it makes it Samuch. It makes it adjacent to the Melachos of the Mishkan, whereby Chazal learn out the 39 malachos that we do in the Mishkan. Those are the very 39 malachos that are also on Shabbos. Now those are the 39 Av malachos, the primary malachos that were done in the Mishkan. However, on Shabbos there's also secondary, not really secondary, there are malachos that are considered to be doimes, similarly to the Avos malachos. They're called toldos, and they have the equal bearing. They're just as severe as the Avos malachos. Now, our Maseches begins with the malacha of Hoitzah, what we call carrying from one Rishus to another Rishus. And one of the reasons why our Maseches begins with this malacha is because the malacha of Hoitzah is not really considered to be a creative malacha, a creative act, and therefore a person might not think it's usher to do on Shabbos. So we begin emphasizing this malacha already in the beginning of the Masechta. Another reason why it begins with Maseches, with malachas Hoitzah, is because Hoitzah, because it's not thought of as being something such a severe or a creative work, thereby a person might aptly do this malacha with less and be transgressing this malacha without much care. And therefore, again, the Maseches begins with this malacha. As a background to this malacha of Hoitzah, we'll talk about the Dalid Rishuyos in the Torah. There are Rishus HaYachid, which is defined as Dalid al Dalid, and the height of Asara Tfachim. If it is going to be, and it's not necessarily that which is owned by a private person, even though it's called a Rishus HaYachid, it just means that it's defined as a private domain, but it's not necessarily because he owns that. It could be that it's not owned by anybody. The second Rishus that we have is what's called the Rishus HaRabim, and that is either defined as a road that goes from one city to another city, or it's a thoroughfare within the city itself that is 16 amos wide, or that it is a public square, a place where there's a large amount of people gathering together like a shuk. A third reshus is rabbinic, and this is called a karmelis. It's not a reshus harabim, it's not a reshus hayochid. It is also dalet al dalet, but it's not 10 tfachim with walls around it. It is either higher than 3 tfachim or lower than 10 tfachim. But if it's less than 3 tfachim, then it's considered to be like the ground, whatever domain it is on. And the fourth domain, the fourth reshus, is called a makom petur. Makom petur is not even daled al daled. And that is the 4 domains, the 4 reshuyos. So when a person is moitzi from reshus hayochid to reshus harabim, or he's machnis from reshus harabim to reshus hayochid, that defines a melacha diaraisa of hoitzah. With that background in mind, let us see the Mishnah together. Be'ezra Hashem. Yetzios hashabos, the transferring from one reshus to another reshus, the melacha of hoitzah, is shtayim shehein arba bifnim. If you have somebody who is standing inside, so that person who makes an akira, that's another important yisoid in melachas hoitzah that I want to stress, that in order to be chayiv the malacha of hoitzah, there has to be an akira from one reshus. That means a lifting up from one reshus, and a hanacha, a placing down into another reshus. So our Mishnah says that if the person's standing inside in a private domain, a reshus hayochid, and he makes a akira from that private domain, that reshus hayochid, and then he places it down in the reshus harabim, or he alternatively is making an akira from the reshus harabim, and he places making a hanach in the reshus hayochid. Those are two that are going to then be aser midia araisa, and we'll also have 2 scenarios that are going to be with a person standing inside when he makes either an akira from the inside, and then somebody else makes the hanacha from the outside, or he makes the akira from the outside and somebody else makes the hanacha in the inside. Those are going to be 2 isurei d'rabbanan. So that's what the Mishnah means when it says shtayim shehein arba bifnim. There are 2 that are d'oraisa, that will come out to be another 2 midirabbanan for the person standing inside. Similarly, shtayim shehein arba bachutz, for the person who is standing outside, there are going to be 2 malachos of hoitzah that are going to be for the person who is standing on the outside. That is, that he is making akira in the reshus harabim and being machnis into the reshus hayochid, making hanach into reshus hayochid, or he makes the akira in the reshus hayochid and makes the hanacha in the reshus harabim. That are the 2 hotzahs midaraisa, which also have 2 more situations where the person who is on the outside will be over an Isser D'Rabbanan if he does one of those 2 things. That means he makes, for example, the akira on the outside, and the other person on the inside makes the hanacha into the Reshus HaYachid, or he makes the akira in the Reshus HaYachid, and the other person will make the hanacha in the Reshus Harabim. Says the Mishnah to explain the various scenarios. Ketzad ha'ani oimei bachutz ubalabayis bifnim. The ani, the poor person, is standing on the outside, which is the typical scenario, and the balabayis is on the inside in the Reshus HaYachid. Some explain that this is the scenario being brought over here because even though it's a mitzvah of tzedakah that the balabayis is doing to the ani by giving him, for example, bread, but since it's a mitzvah haba be'aveira, it's nonetheless going to be chayiv chatos, even if it's going to be a mitzvah. Now the Mishnah explains the scenarios. The first one, Poshet he'ani es yadoi lifnim v'nosan l'soich yado shel balabayis. The ani extends his hand holding onto a basket from the outside, so therefore he makes an akira, picking up the basket from the Reshus Harabim, and then he puts it and he places it onto the hands of the balabayis who's standing in the Reshus HaYachid making hanacha. And here, even though the balabayis himself, his hands are not daled al daled, but nonetheless, because the hands have chashivus of daled al daled, it's considered to be a hanacha now in the Reshus HaYachid. So therefore, the ani is going to be chayiv for making a hotzah from a what's called a hachnasa from the Reshus Harabim to the Reshus HaYachid. Secondly, another scenario where the ani will be chayiv, or the ani, he takes the bread that is on the hands of the balabayis, and he makes an akira from the shus hayachid, and he brings it into the shus harabim, making hanacha. So the Mishnah says, in both scenarios, ha'ani chayiv u'balabayis potter. The ani is going to be chayiv, again, b'shogei chayiv chatos. If it's b'mezi without hasra, it's chiyuv kares, and with hasra, it's going to be a chiyuv of skila. Now the Gemara Mishnah explains how it's so with the person who is standing on the outside. Poshat balabayis es yodoi lachutz. Lebenasan letoch yodoi shel ani. The balhabayis, he extends his hand holding, let's say, bread to the outside, whereby he makes an akira. He lifts up from the reshus hayachid and makes a hotzah, and then places it into the hands of the ani, and making a hanacha into the reshus harabim. Or second scenario, that the balabais will be chayiv for meleches hotzah, shenota mitoicha v'hichnis. He places, let's say, the basket. He takes the basket that is being situated on the hands of the ani outside, and he picks it up, makes an akir from the shus harabim, and he's machnis. He brings it into the shus hayachid, and then he places it down, making a hanacha. So Balabayis is going to be chayiv v'ha'ani potter. The Balabayis will be chayiv into these two scenarios, midiaraisa, and the ani will be potter. Now, when it says that the ani is potter over here, and it said where the Balabayis was potter before, until now, these words potter mean potter umutter. And the reason why I emphasize it is because generally potter in Masechet Shabbos means potter aval oser, means potter mikorban chatos, but it's oser midirabonon. But over here, it's an exception, and when it says potter, it means potter and mutter, because here, the ani, and the previous case, the balabayis, did not do anything at all. So therefore, it's mutter lechatchila. The Mishnah goes on to explain, poshat ha'ani es yadoi lifnim. Now the Mishnayos bring the next four scenarios that are going to be midrabanon. Poshat ha'ani es yadoi lifnim, v'notel balabayis mitoicha. Here, the ani extends his hand holding onto the basket, and therefore he made an akira from the reshus harabim. And then v'notel balabayis mitoicha, the balabayis takes it from him and makes the hanacha in the reshus hayachid. So here we have the situation where the ani does the akira and the balabayis makes the hanacha. So when you have two people that can do the same malacha, but they both do it together, so that's called shnayim sha'asua, whereby they are both being over an iser dirabanon. They're not going to be over an iser deraisa because they did it together, and therefore when they did it together, this malacha together, this is going to be over an iser dirabanon of shnayim sha'asua. That's the first dirabanon. The second, oishenosan lesoicha, where the balabayis, he takes the bread and he puts it into the hands of the ani. So he made the akir and the shus hayachid, and the ani is moitzi v'hoitzi, and he takes it out and he's moitzi into the shus harabim and makes the hanacha. So shnei and peturim, in both these cases, they're both going to be potter aval aser. Here they're going to be over an iser dirabanon for doing half the malacha. Now, the Mishnah goes on to say the other scenarios. Poshat, that are dirabanan. Poshat balabayis es yodoi lachutz. The balabayis extends his hand holding onto bread, let's say, outside. So he made the akira from the shus hayachid. And v'nota la'ani mitoicha, and the ani takes it from his hands, right? And he puts it in his basket, making the hanacha in the Reshus Harabim. Or a scenario where the ani, he takes the basket and he puts the basket making the akir from the Shus HaRabim, and then the Balabayis takes the basket from him, and he's machnis it into the Shus HaYachid, making the Hanacha, whereby each one did one part of the Malacha, Shnei and Peturim. So again, we have over here 8 scenarios. The first 4 are 2 scenarios where the Ani is going to be Chayiv for the Malacha of Hotzah, Midiraisa, because he made either an Akira from the outside and a Hanacha to the inside, from the Reshus HaRabim to the Reshus HaYachid, or vice versa, he actually made an Akira from the Reshus HaYachid and made the Hanacha in the Reshus HaRabim, or the Balabayis, who's standing on the inside, either made a Akira from the Reshus HaYachid and made a Hotzah into the Reshus HaRabim, making the Hanacha there, or in the reverse direction, he made a Akira from the Reshus HaRabim, and then he was machnis in the Reshus HaYachid, making Hanach in the Reshus HaYachid. So those are the 4 scenarios that are deraisa, whereby the Mishnah also explains 4 additional scenarios that are derabanan.